Right.
I know
They
who your
keep
first
me.
meeting was with, so I get it. Just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, that is a very true statement. Very true statement. That meeting wears me out. So,
Well, I'm
uh,
going to start and just say
yeah.
good
Go ahead.
morning, everybody. This is Brad Cahoon. He is our product marketing manager for Pneumatech. So he is focused on the very technical side of it. However, you are stuck with me to your day to day. So checking inventory, order status, helping you assist with tools, things like that, you have me. However, if it's something where you want help kind of spec in something or have technical questions, Brad will definitely be your resource. In this chat, I just dropped in a link for Pneumatech. If you guys, would take a second just to see if you have access to it. I'm just trying to pinpoint who has access, who doesn't, who I need to resend links to. But at any point, please, reach out separately, let me know, and I can work on a per person case with you. But more or less, this will be recorded, so don't feel like you have to memorize it. We're also going to share this presentation deck with you. So, all right, take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Brad Cahoon, like Kate said. I work with Kate, especially with all the existing customers, and give you a little quick history of myself. I've been around since '86. Started with a company called Tech Engineering, and moved to Flair, which uh, happened mid '90s, and then I moved to Ingersoll Rand in '98. Worked with them for multiple years. Became the Zex Western Regional Sales Manager. Left, and then I went to work for Rogers Machinery, building, as the Western Regional Sales Manager. And then here comes along, coming back to the East Coast for Pneumatech, which my mom and family still live on the East Coast, so we took the East Coast job to be closer to family. So that's my background. Been around since 1986. So might not look that old, but I have been around that long. Give a little history about Pneumatech. We're over 50 years old. 2005, we were acquired by Atlas Copco. Uh, they did a terrible job integrating us into the family. Actually, they use us as the model of what not to do. They moved from Wisconsin down to Houston, Texas. In that transfer, they were able to keep 2 out of the complete factory. So, but not what you wanted to do. You want to keep as many people from the factory as you can. But those 2 still with us. Ed still works in our engineering department, so he's a great resource for all the older stuff that's out there because he was the design engineer. Don't know how many more years he'll be with us, but at least he's still with us and somebody I can rely on. Beyond that, Houston still makes our desk and dryers, 850 CFM and above, still come out of the Houston branch. We're going to be seeing, now that we have acquired Aircell, we're going to start seeing more and more products coming back to the United States over time. Don't know when the release dates are, but they're definitely working on more products being built here instead of being assembled someplace else. Most of our refrigerated comes out of Italy. Most of the deskings come out of what they call Air Power in Belgium. So just to give you where some of this comes from. So anyway, that's my background in history. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about product, how it works, I've been around long enough that we can get you the correct product. What I'm excited about is when I look at our product ranges, we have a product pretty much for every application for compressed air. All right, so I'm going to say that's been, we've filled all those gaps on product ranges. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get to the PowerPoint presentation that we're going to share.
Hey, Brad, you said some of the desiccants come out of Belgium. I mean, what comes out of Houston and what comes out of Belgium on the desiccant side?
850 CFM and above all come out of Houston.
Okay,
Heat,
small stuff out of Belgium.
yeah, so that's the heatless, heated blow purge. That will all come out of Houston if it's 850 CFM and above. All right, so all the big stuff. And I know that they're talking about bringing all the small stuff, welded vessels coming back to the United States, but I can't give you a date. You know, is that next month? I know that some people are already getting them, you know, from the Tennessee facility, but I didn't know. And eventually, I do believe everything will be moving to the Tennessee air cell facility. Right? They're going to be using our designs, but it'll be assembled there.
So
right? But
I guess I didn't realize that the Aircell Incorporation, I'd forgotten that I get Copco bought them. So the desiccants won't be done in Houston anymore. Everything will go to Tennessee
eventually,
eventually. So
that's the game plan.
they'll shut down the Houston facility.
Houston facility makes oil-free skids, and that's what their main focus will be.
Okay.
Right?
And Aircell still sells direct through distribution their Aircell labeled products, correct?
Yes. Long term, I would not bet my hat on that one.
Okay.
Not to spread rumors, but you know, the meeting
Yeah.
that I had was that brand will eventually go away. Right.
Yeah, you'll suck up all their capacity.
Yeah, all that capacity will be gone, and then we will be you know, using that facility for US made or US. I don't want to say made, assembled. So
since Bobby Canant just jumped on, would you repeat that last little blurb that we talked about?
about Aircell?
Yeah.
So yeah, right now we're building out of Houston for 850 CF and above. We're going to be eventually moving that to Tennessee to be built out of the assembly plant in the assembly plant at Aircell, and eventually over the next I do believe the next 4 to 5 years they'll phase out the Aircell brand uh, over the next few years. So right now, if you look at what they have as a brand, you know, they make the Atlas brand, right? They make the Quincy brand. We have the Pneumatech. We have the Nano brand, and you know we do brand some CP dryers, but beyond that, all the rest of the brands that they have acquired over the years, they've actually gotten rid of. All right, so one time there was like 15 brands of dryers, right, and those all have dropped away. So eventually it'll all be the Pneumatech brand, and Nano will still continue to be around. So. Any other questions on that? So what we'll talk about you know, the majority of the meeting is we came out what we're going to call structured desiccant. About mid last year came out. I'm actually excited about it because of how it actually works. All right, we'll give you see if I can't show this little video here real quick about how it.
There's no volume plan on it. So are you going to explain this as we go?
So here I am listening to this thing play in my ears, and now you tell me there's no volume. Thanks. It was a great video if you guys would be able to actually hear it. All right. So let's back it up real quick, and I'll mute it. I'll mute it on my end. All right. So
Even. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll send you a link to this because it's actually a good video of what they're trying to do. So what we ended up coming up with is what we call structured desiccant, right? So when we look at the efficiencies of this, somebody earlier today called it toilet paper, but it's actually a honeycomb cylinder that we stack on top of each other, right? The huge benefit of this is high efficiencies. So we end up getting laminar flow through that desiccant, and that reduces pressure drop. So when we look at total cost of ownership, the ownership goes down because our pressure drop is lower. So we get right about 1.8 pounds of pressure drop through it, where standard desiccant dryer, just to get through the desiccant, it's about 2.8. So we lose one pound of pressure drop just through the dryer because it does have the laminar flow, right? Some of the other aspects of this is when we look at it is it also gives us no desiccant dusting, right? Because it is a structured, right? The structures don't break down. You don't get the rubbing in between the desiccant. So when the flow goes through there, right, we don't get the rubbing and the abrasion. So we don't get desiccant dusting that occurs on a standard desiccant dryer, right? And due to that, our lifespan is actually longer. So we're going to get 7 to 10 years out of this desiccant compared to, the 4 to 7 that you might get out of a normal standard desiccant dryer. Again, they're just showing the difference between the structured and, the bead mentality. You notice that how that beads went down there, and beads will degrade over time is what they're saying, because activated aluminum does break down over time, but having it in a structured format, we don't have that. When they put the spring on top, just allows us, we don't care if we mount this upside down vertically. We just want to make sure that we keep it in a solid state. We just don't want it to move around. But what we can do is we can mount it upside down, sideways. It doesn't always have to be vertical.
What is the size range of this dryer?
So this dryer, we're actually just this month lowering it down to about 10 CFM. Right now it's 45 CFM to 690 CFM.
With plans to go larger later on, right?
I think we're going to be, I think we're going to be struggling to make it larger, right? I have not seen any layout plans to go larger, right? But I have seen the plans to go down to the 10 CFM range.
Okay.
Does it have an option, for a dew point sensor and dew point demand switching and a dew point display,
So great question. So the way we bring it in is it's NEMA 4 with dew point demand with the touchscreen monitor. So everything's on the touchscreen. So you can do dew point will be there where it is in the cycle switching, right? So everything's on that touchscreen panel right there. And that's what we bring in. So this is what we're actually stocking. So when we order these things, we are bringing them in as NEMA 4 with the touch screen with dew point demand.
So we're really talking about applications for 125 horsepower compressor and down, give or take.
That's about right. 150 would probably be about 750 CFM. So 125 and down, yeah.
And Copco has access to this dryer also, of course.
Of course. Of course. And from my experience, what I've seen in the field, once you get, you start to get up into that, there is a reason why we started 850 building them in Houston. Once you get up to about the 850 CFM range, right, it's either going to be, a high tech, or a pharmaceutical, right? So it's a little more of a specialty dryer. I'm going to put this as more of the everyday dryer that paint processes and other places like that. But what we get into is once you get up above that 850 CFM range, you're going to start thinking about heated dryers unless it has to be a heatless dryer, right? And again, heatless, where I've seen it has to be heatless is, microprocessing chips and some pharmaceutical applications. All right. So once you get above that 850 range, just the payback to reduce compressed air, starts to sway you into the other products like a heated or a heated blower purge. All right. Yeah. And I'll just say if you got a 230 CFM application, I have a really hard time to apply a blower purge just because of the cost. Look at the cost of the machine. Yes, you're saving air, but the payback is really a long time to get that payback when you look at the cost of the machine. All right. So hopefully that answers your questions on that. So again, it's lower, what we're going to consider to be lower power consumption, and that's coming from the lower pressure drop. All right. Total cost of ownership is what we're preaching about because we don't have the desiccant changes. All right. And because we have no dusting, we don't have valves getting clogged. Right. And it has versatility because, we can take that controller. That controller is web enabled. So you can plug into it and display the same information from that on a IP address. So
for those just joining at the end, like Bob Holland just joined, that notice there's no desiccant dusting. So you see on that picture, there's no after filter, but they always have 2 inlet air filters to protect the desiccant. They want 2 filters as pre-filters.
And that's correct. And what we're stocking, it comes with 2 pre-filters. All right. So
is the first filter is it kind of a moisture separator, or is it just a particulate that's 1.0 instead of 0.01?
That is correct. It's a general filter. It's actually it's a point 0.1. Excuse me. I think it's a 1 micron, and then afterwards is the 0.01.
Yeah, that's what we usually see. Now, just to say, I have a lot of experience with these because I'm old. But
yeah, exactly.
One thing you got to watch out for is particularly like in a big facility, they may put these somewhere in the plant because they need the lower dew point and the cleaner air for a certain thing. Okay, and then they have old refriges or whatever in the compressor room, and you get condensation forming, between the compressor room and this dryer, and that particulate pre-filter is not designed to handle bulk liquid. So what we do in these situations, just to be on the safe side, is we add a moisture separator. So we would add a moisture separator in front of these 2 filters to keep bulk liquid out of these 2 filters.
So true. And when you look at certain air compressor manufacturers, they don't put moisture separators on their air compressors. And I almost
It's
want
optional. It is optional.
to.
Now, we never sell one without a moisture separator, but because we tell them, you got to have it. But
You
but it
do.
is an optional thing, and a lot of people don't realize what they're doing. And here you go.
Exactly. And I ran into that in California where we installed a desiccant dryer and it was on a Kaiser compressor. And here, lo and behold, that Kaiser compressor did not have an or moisture separator on it.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
tons of
So
condensate was headed that way. Yeah.
that's right. And they wondered why they could only get -20 out of it. All right.
I say it was doing pretty good.
It was for what it was doing. It did have a wet tank before it, but it was doing pretty good for what it was. And
Yeah.
as soon as they put a moisture separator on the discharge of the compressor, you know, within 24 hours, the dryer, was sitting at -50. All
Yeah.
right. So,
Yeah.
good point. And we do offer, a moisture separator. All right. That would actually, you can see how we mount those two filters. We have a water separator that you can mount just like that right to those two pre-filters.
Cool.
Right. That way you don't have to have any piping connections. Right.
Yeah. You've got kind of the modular connections on your filters, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing for the water separator. It's the
Good.
same bowl, same head, just the internal has the centrifugal separator.
Cool.
All right. So they're going to talk about I say we're going to talk about the environmental, now you don't have to worry about getting rid of the desiccant. But the bigger one on this picture is you can see how we stack them up. So you can just imagine on smaller dryers, it's just going to be, one module of desiccant in it. And as we go up in size, we just stack those modules up inside there. All right. And when we look at energy costs, and we're taking this strictly against ourselves, right? We show that, what we're saving in energy, right? And we're also looking at, what that would be compared to the competition, right? Actually, when we look at this, a desiccant dryer is a desiccant dryer. There's no free lunch. We all have to purge, right? So we're sitting there purging just like anybody else would have to do, but we get the energy savings mostly due to the pressure drops that we're seeing through the dryers, right? And what it would cost to overcome those pressure drops.
Is your purge rate around 14% like most everybody?
We're right there. 50, they say
Like
15,
15.
but it's right in there with everybody else's. All right. Again, they say it's structured flow, low pressure drop, right? I will tell you the desiccant. If you look at the drum dryers, I don't want to call this a drum dryer, but it's the same thought process of how they embedded it into the honeycombs, right? Our minimum life is 7 years, right? If you don't hit this with oil, right, these things will last longer than that.
Yeah.
Right. Oil is going to be the one that actually kills that desiccant. And because we have no dusting, we don't have an after filter. All right, one less thing they have to worry about. Flexible installation. Again, we don't, because we're actually spring loading this, keeping it all together. We don't care which direction. You can turn it on its head if you had to. All right. So I haven't touched too much about this Pure Logic controller. All right, but it is a touchscreen. It has the icons built in, so it's online monitoring. Right, so you can actually look at this, on a computer, can log into it, right? It does have automatic restart after voltage failure. All right, so a power out restart is standard. And I can tell you from my experience, I've only actually touched one of these screens once. From a service technician point of view, it takes you about 30 seconds to figure it out because you're going to slide right through everything. It's not like it's almost like an iPhone, right? It only takes you 30 seconds to figure out, what screens go to what. So they have multiple sizes. So we rate the dryers for -5 or -40. One limitation of this dryer is we're not going to have a -100 option. Right. So the best we're going to be able to do is that -40. Right. And yeah, we do have options for -100, but it's just not going to be in this technology. The other part of that is it comes with a nozzle purge set, right? So as you increase pressure, you'll want to use smaller purge nozzles so we can keep the purge down. The purge set that comes in it is for 101 pounds, right? And this just shows you how it falls into our current portfolio, right? And what we're going to end up doing is that on that bottom one, the pH 2 to 45, we're going to end up getting rid of that model, and we're going to take this all the way down to 10, and then we're going to come out with a different model for the 2 to 10. All right. This is just going to show you what we actually have in stock. So the new models are in stock all the way up to 220 CFM. Right. I looked yesterday; they're all there, and we also stocked the Twin Towers, and some of them are in, some of them are not, but we always have at least 2 of them, headed our direction. And again, we build these with NEMA 4, dew point control. All right, that's all built in is what we end up doing. So we don't, somebody says, oh, we don't want dew point control. I want to say too bad it comes with it, because we brought it over that way because I'm going to say almost everybody uses dew point control and wants that on the displays.
Yeah, I sometimes say you could say that we don't build stupid dryers.
Exactly.
Our dryers
Right?
know what's going on and they know what they need to do, and that's the way we build them. I like it.
Right. So that is all the slides I have on structured desiccant. Any questions or concerns or thoughts?
It looks good.
Yeah, I'm actually happy, right? And I don't want to sound cynical, but I hate to recommend product that I might roll my eyes on, and this is one that I don't roll my eyes on. This is one that I look at and say, hey, I can stand 100% behind this one. All right. And I'll be, since I've came aboard, there's very little that I've seen that we do that I'm not excited about. All right. And if you ask me questions, I'm a very honest person. I'll tell you exactly what I think about it, right? To tell you, hey, we do this or we do that, and this is a better fit compared to something else. All right. So don't think that I'm just out here to push one particular product or another. All right. I'll tell you when we're a great fit and when maybe something else is a better fit. All right. So, and since I do have you guys and you're a captured audience, and if I can take a couple more minutes of your time, right? We actually also came out with the CDA or CDE electronic condensate drain valves. This is our how do I how do I fight this one? This is our version to beat Pico.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Pico had, I'm going to say Pico, we took our lessons from Pico, right? There was a couple things that the Bicos do that we do not do, right? One thing that we do over the Bicos, just on the slide presentation, is we actually use a float. So it's an electronic sensor, right? And as the moisture goes up and down, there's actually a mechanical float that goes up and down with it, right? The second one is we actually have an internal strainer where the Bicos do not have a strainer. All right. So having that internal strainer really helps us out getting the problem solved that I've seen with the Bicos. Right. Since I was on the Ingersoll Rand side, Ingersoll Rand was putting Bicos on Westchester built dryers, and they were having a 10% failure rate. Right. So, and that's mostly due to rust and scale. You know, you hate to blame the drain valve, but the drain valve wasn't really built for the rust and scale that they were seeing. All right. Let's see if
Well, I
can.
hope you can come in below, a little bit below Bico's price, because they're pretty proud of them.
We're very competitive. I want to say when I looked at the pricing, we were just a hair below them, price wise.
Good.
All right, and we make them bigger. Right, we've been using the one that's in the bottom left hand corner. Those actually have been used on our cycling dryers for a fairly long time. Right, so we have a good history with those, but you can see that we make them all the way bigger.
They all work the same.
They all work on the same methodology. The only one that changes is once you get to the one that has the silver cap on the front. That's actually a place for a heater. Right, you can insert a heater into them. The two smaller versions, they have like I don't want to call it I'm going to call it a wraparound heater to keep it from freezing.
Yeah.
Right, but the insertion heater goes onto the bigger ones. Right, if you have an installation that you need a heater, I would steer you to one with the insertion heater.
Right.
All right.
Is the sensor, is it a sonic sensor? Like, is it bouncing off the water?
No, it's not. So the float itself has a magnet in it, right? And as that magnet goes up and down, it makes the connections. Right. Let's see if I don't have a. I hate to scroll through real quick, but yeah, this one, when it's in standby, you can see where that little float is, and as the float goes up, right? So that float does a couple things for us, right? So when it goes up and hits the top, we know when it, hey, we need a drain. And as that float drops to the bottom, we know if the float does not hit the bottom. So we'll try to clear it. We'll do some pulsations, right? One thing that the drain valve does do is if it's in standby for more than 50 minutes, it will open up for 3 seconds. Right? Just, is there something wrong? And in that 3 seconds, if the float doesn't hit bottom again, right? So it doesn't see that float is at the bottom, it'll try to pulse itself. Try to clear out anything that's in there that might be holding it up. All right. So yeah, and once it starts to do that pulsing, it'll send an alarm. So one other thing that this thing does is it does have an alarm circuit on it. So it actually is a little pigtail. It has a normally open, normally closed contacts. So if you do want to take this back to some control system, you can actually monitor if the dryers the drain is in alarm or not in alarm. There's two different type of touchscreens. They both do the same thing. One says alarm, one says power. The difference is when the small one's in alarm, it will pause the timer drain, the blue, to indicate that it's an alarm. All right. So that's the drain valves. They're in stock. Again, I'm actually fairly happy about these. These are actually something another product that is out there that I can hang my hat on, because it looks like they have been a very stable product for a while. Any questions, concerns?
You might mention to the team there, some of the new people may not be familiar with the conservator. And then my follow-up question of the conservator, is it going to be built in Tennessee also at some point?
I think that's going to be the last product that moves. All right. The conservators are still all assembled. A conservator is a flow control valve. Right. Since I was part of an audit team, what we can able to do is run your storage at a slightly higher pressure, but lower the pressure to the plant. Right. Which anything that's unregulated, it actually reduces the consumption. Right. Unregulated or product demand, leaks, anything that actually is out in the plant that will reduce its consumption. Right. So having that higher storage pressure, and it doesn't have to be that much higher. We ask for about 5 pounds higher than what the flow control is set for. Lets you to have a control strategy. You put a tank, you're raising the pressure in the tank, and that control strategy would be off that tank of what those compressors will do. Right. So the tank is responding to the demand of the system. Right. The compressors are responding to the tank, instead of the compressors always trying to look at downstream events. Right. We're allowing the tank to look at the downstream events, and the tank will actually handle. And there's times that I have personally seen that the tank handles the event, and we don't start the next air compressor. All right. If done correctly. All right. So, and again, I worked for that auditing team there. Ingersoll Rand for years. So if you have any questions about tank storage and cold start permissives, and feel free to reach out to me, because that's where I've hanged out for over 10 years, is in that auditing world.
And you also have a whole complement of ancillary air measuring equipment in your measuring equipment catalog.
Yes, we do. Yes, you do. And the biggest one that's been hitting the market is the leak detection. But we also have a standalone dew point monitor, and the best one with the standalone dew point monitor is we have one for refrigerated dryers. All right, so the sensor is made, so it can do refrigerated or desiccant, compared to the Costas and the rest of them out in the Mitchell sensors. They were only really made for desiccant product, and always struggled with refrigerated product. All right, so.
Right. Brad, do you have, by any chance, any kind of sensor, alarm monitor that would detect lube content in air that is supposed to be not from an oilless compressor, but it's considered oil-free due to the air treatment?
I'm going to have to look into that one.
I haven't seen anything, but I sure could use something.
Yes, I've heard of them in the past. I want to make sure that I want to make sure that if we do have one, how does it actually work? Because you're not just trying to do the aerosols. You're looking for the vapor also.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So it's the vapor.
If it's supposed to be oil free,
Yeah,
then you could have something that says, hey, I've got vapor, I'm not oil free anymore, you know.
that's correct, right? So the aerosols are actually easy to measure. It's can we actually measure the vapors? Right.
Well, if you
That's
find something that can do either one or both, I'd be very interested. Please.
okay. Sure. I know we have one. I do believe it's probably just for aerosols, but let me check on that to make sure they can do both.
Well, that might be attractive. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, that is true. That is true, right? I mean, I found you can use a micro impinger to as a safety. It doesn't actually have a readout, but it's made by it is made by Honeywell,
Hmm.
right? And it's a color change indicator to indicate if you have any oil in the system,
Okay.
right? Scott Boss always preached those things, right? We use them on. We have an absorption tower where instead of just doing a filter, we have an absorption tower with carbon in it, and
Yeah.
we'll put that micro impinger on the end of it, and if it turns color, you need to change out the
You got a
material.
problem. Yeah.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
Want
any
to mention
other?
their nitrogen and oxygen
Yeah. So
products?
yeah. So I have a counterpart named Ben Smith. Ben has been with us for 10 plus years. Ben's focus is he's the product manager for nitrogen and oxygen, right? So I can talk about nitrogen and oxygen, but I'm going to say I'm not the product expert, right? That's going to be Ben Smith, right? There's not too many questions that you're going to be able to hit out there and say, he does that, he lives that world. Uh, so what we come out with is multiple nitrogen. Uh, so we go from everything from a small membrane that gives you a 99.5, right, to large twin towers that's giving you the 5.9s. The better thing that we do compared to a lot of the competition is we'll take a refrigerated dryer, right? So a lot of the competition, you have to have a desiccant dryer in front of it. We will take refrigerated air. We also have a dew point sensor on the incoming. So we do take refrigerated, but we need a 45-degree dew point. Right? If it's not a 45-degree dew point, we will shut the nitrogen generator down. Right? And that's because you don't want to hit that carbon molecular sieve with water. All right. So we do that. And it comes as a complete package. So what happens is we have a complete package that you get. Right. So we just don't sell just a twin tower looking item. It's a complete package. So it's going to have a dew point sensor, an oxygen sensor, because on desiccant we are actually measuring the absence of oxygen, right? Because there's no actual nitrogen sensor. So we measure how much oxygen is still left in the air and do the math backwards. All right. The other one that we do different than anybody else that I've seen on the market is we go into the nitrogen generator, from the nitrogen generator to the tank, back to the nitrogen generator, right? And the nitrogen generator is looking at the purity coming off the tank. So we will, when you start up the system, we will purge the tank down to the purity that you want before we send it out to the plant. And if the purity ever drops to your alarm point, we will shut off the nitrogen going out to your facility because it's no longer within specification. All right, doesn't happen very often, but it's one of those secure points of if you take a standard nitrogen generator from, let's say Great Lakes, right? Their purity is at the nitrogen generator. Their purity is not what you have in that tank and not what you're going out to the plant with. All right. So when they start up their system, they're measuring the purity at the nitrogen generator, but they forgot, hey, how about purging that tank out? All right. They'll go over and open it up to try to purge out any oxygen out of the tank, but we actually take it a step farther and actually do a purge of that tank before it goes out to the plant. All right. So,
Brad, I got a
yeah,
question. So what you're saying is the second pass that the nitrogen travels through the generator, that is strictly for a monitoring purpose or to check it.
that's correct.
Okay, so you actually have 2 inlets and 2 outlets
Correct.
for the right. Okay. Well, I've never seen that before, but it does sound like a good idea as far as guaranteeing, the purity.
That's correct. And the other portion that they do is they put a flow control valve. Right. So I've actually done a startup with Ben on a nitrogen system. So what they end up doing is they go out in the plant and open up a bunch of valves till we get to the maximum flow of the nitrogen generator, right? And we set up a back pressure regulator to maintain the pressure. And once your flow gets above that, right, your pressure starts to decay, but it decays out in your facility, not inside the nitrogen generator,
Which would affect the results.
which affects the results. And then what? Yeah,
Pressure. Right.
and then what happens is if you continue to try to overflow, right, you start to lose purity, and that's when we
Down.
alarm out. Yep.
Yeah, I got you.
So
Well, I've never
yeah,
seen that before. That's pretty cool.
it is. I was totally impressed when I saw that it was it did that, that second pass,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's all, when we get up to some of them, it's all a internal machine. So it comes in a box. It looks very similar to the uh, structured desiccant. Just that box is bigger, right? And then once we get up to the Twin Towers, they make these things. I would put them into like the 3,000 CFM desiccant dryer size. Is how big we actually go with them, right? They're just a big, massive Twin Tower looking. But we continue to do the 2 inlets and 2 outlets.
Yeah, Parker, we've sold some Parker and they make the big ones too. Bob Holland sold a pretty big system, I think probably larger than any I've seen, but a lot of the ones I've done are not very big. I mean,
Sure.
you got usually a 50 horsepower rotary screw compressor feeding it, or maybe a 75, I mean, they're out there, they're pretty, pretty common.
That's right. And there's getting to be more and more applications, right? I mean, it started, the applications I quickly saw, the one we even did the startup one for was a for potato chips. So they were going to fill the bag with nitrogen.
Yeah, we have one of those close to our office in Birmingham.
Yeah.
They're a good customer. It's owned by Utz Foods.
Yep. Yeah. I forget the Hertz or something like that. I forget the name of the. It's one of the. Yeah, you forget. I forget the name of the potato chip, but they're up there doing that. The other one is the big nitrogen one that we're doing is the blanketing at a heat treating process. All right, so they're going to heat up tools for automobile parts, and as they're heating that up, that's all blanketed with nitrogen. The bigger one with that is we're using a booster to fill up some dewars, right, in some bottles, because they want if they lose power, they want 1 hour worth of nitrogen on standby. All right. So, we've got 8 racks of bottles sitting out there that we took up to 5,000 pounds, right? To provide them that 1 hour's worth of nitrogen just in case of a power outage.
You're talking 5,000 PSI.
Yeah.
Well, whose booster do you use? I'm thinking you don't make one. Do you use?
Oh, yeah. We actually offer it from Pneumatech.
You actually make your booster?
No, we don't make our booster.
Yeah, well, I've run into this before, and when we're trying to quote one and there's a booster involved, it's usually made, by Bauer. I believe that's the name of it, but they, they're in bed with all of the companies that specialize in N2 gens. That's all they do.
Yeah.
And so they're buying from them, every month. And here I come, I hadn't bought from them in a year, right? So, who gets the good price, right? So, I mean, those things are expensive, and and if my cost is 10 grand more than the other guy, it's a problem.
So we do
So maybe
buy.
y'all can help us with that.
Yeah, well, I think there's some volume because we're buying them for multiple nitrogen generating systems, right? So
Well, there you go. You're playing in the big leagues, and we're not, as far as those boosters are concerned.
exactly. Yeah. So, and I know we've played around with different boosters, but I think we've finally settled in which ones that we like from a reliability standpoint.
Gotcha.
All right. So, one thing about the boosters is they are contact cooled. Right. So we got to be worried about more of a splash lube. Right. So
Right.
you may get a little oil. So we do put filtration on that to make sure we don't flood out oil into the system if you're using a booster, right? The other
Yeah.
one that we've done recently, which is so what we get into is the nitrogen contracts. So one, I'm going to tell you, you got to have the conversation about the nitrogen contracts a year out before those contracts expire. All right. To start this whole process. All right. But what we've done is put in the nitrogen system and had them keep the nitrogen for backup for the first 6 months so they get used to it. All right. That, hey, this works, just don't yank out the stuff and then put cross your fingers and hope it works. Right. So we had them do that. The other one that we've done recently, and it's a wine process where we push the wine, right? We use it as a base load, and their nitrogen is trim. So they have peak demands and a low demand, what we're going to consider to be a low demand. So our machine does the low demand, which takes away the base load of the nitrogen from the tanks, but they use the tanks in the process for the trimming, right? When they do a batch load movement, right, they'll pull from those tanks, and that's actually worked out pretty well because now they're looking at it going, this has worked well. Let's do this, a next step to move out, the liquid tanks from the facility. So again, Ben is I'm going to say Ben is the expert, which is great because now you have not just a dryer guy that just preaches about nitrogen, but actually somebody that's actually, I think Kate saw him the other day, sent me a picture. He's in his natural element when he's talking about it. So.
And if you guys ever need, referrals, I mean, we just like laser cutting or whatever industry, if you guys ever want to talk to somebody who's, obviously bought our equipment and put them in, it's always available. So You know, sometimes it's easier talking to another customer and giving them the confidence kind of thing. Hey, Bobby, good to see you, by the way.
Hey, it's good to hear you. I don't see your pretty face.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm here. Hey.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair. You know, I mean,
That's true.
all these other people should have their cam on.
Yeah, come on. You either got a camera or I got to hear your
I'm going to
voice.
send out an email about it.
Yeah, those are great. Love those.
So hey, that is what I had for you guys today. All right. Yeah,
Okay.
unless you, I mean, I could talk all day about dryers, but that's you guys need to be out there selling some stuff too.
Yeah, we